This week on the Orange Box Podcast, we talk about the return of classic Lord of the Rings games, Pokemon Bank shutting down, whether this is the time to jump ship with gaming, and more. All of this tonight, but first, on to the new Beautiful Bean intro. Welcome to the place where PC and console gaming talk combine. This is the Orange Box Podcast, episode 150. I am your host, the man who leaves a red scent trail behind everywhere he goes, Nathan, also known as the Frozen Gamer 87. And joining me, as always, the man whose every action in life is a QTE that stops time until he completes it, Justin, better known as I'm Zeracon. How you doing today? How's your week been?
Okay, I finally decided to do the QT there. So it's been not bad. I mean, I've been having a bit of, I guess, congestion this past week, which not a big deal, but just been causing me quite a bit of coughing. So I apologize, sort of in advance on that end. But yeah, it's been going on and off there. What day was it? I don't know. There was something that happened over the weekend, but I just can't remember what it was specifically. Today, though, I went over to my sister's just to spend time with my niece and nephew before they get ready to head back to school. So I took them to the playground in the area, and we had time there. After we came back, got them some lunch and stuff. But also, I surprised them with a physical copy of Stardew Valley.
Nice.
For the Switch. They were not expecting that at all. So my nephew, he wants to play that. So I set that up for him while I was doing stuff with my niece. So I believe on the shrink wrap, there was a sticker that said it had version 1.6, which is one of the latest versions of the game. So there should be most of the newer content should be on, right on the cartridge itself without having to download anything new, which is definitely great. And also co-op should definitely be on there. So if, sometime either they want to play co-op together, they can do that. If I'm there when they want to play, they can do that. So that's something that they can do. And I knew they would just enjoy that. So there's that. And there's still one more thing that I feel like I wanted to note, but I just can't remember what it is. So if I remember, I'll mention it. But if not, then yeah, that's everything that's happened this past week.
Nice. So with that physical copy of Stardew Valley, is that something you've had for a while, or you had to track it down?
No, I purposely went and got that, and I was a bit curious about like how it was happening because I didn't know, with the different versions and new updates, I didn't know what's already on the cartridge. I mean, I've heard that with Fangamer, they've been doing a decent job with, as newer versions come out, putting the latest version on the carts.
Okay.
So I didn't get it directly from them, but I got from another retailer, and I got it, and I was like, all right, cool. It says it has the latest version, or at least the 1.6 version. Was like, that's fine, and that'll be plenty for them to work with. So
nice.
I was pleased.
How much was it?
That I think that was about $35.
Oh, that's not bad at all.
Yeah,
might have to look into that. Because I mean, I know my wife enjoyed playing that one before when she played it on Switch. I wouldn't mind having a physical copy, so I'll have to look into that. Cool. Either that or, do you know if it's on GOG?
It is on GOG.
Okay, I'll keep that in mind as well.
Yeah.
Cool. On my end, trying to think, wasn't much of anything that happened over the weekend other than just normal stuff, but so I mean, It ended up being kind of busier though the past few days because Sunday let's see here. Well, for one, I was asked to do music, so I ended up having to do music. Obviously, I was happy to do it, but it wasn't originally part of the plan. So I had that, and then the guy on the team who usually does the leading portion, the speaking and everything else, unfortunately was sick, and so he couldn't do his portion. So basically, I was leading as well, and not just being lead instrument. So that made some additional stuff there, and then we had a church potluck right after that. And then Monday, I had to get to the office a little bit early, and I worked Monday, Tuesday in the office because we had our town hall meeting. And so I had to make sure everything was set up for all the different workspaces, which was mostly just, there's a few like mouse and keyboards that we had gotten like late Thursday, but because it was like right before I had to leave, I didn't have time to go put them in the places, and so I did that early Monday morning. And then went around and just made absolutely sure that everything was working properly, because there's sometimes with like the docks, I'll have to unplug the power and plug it back in order for all of the things attached to it to actually function, like the monitors, mouse, keyboard, that sort of thing. So yeah, it just ended up being a busier morning, and then various other things, including trying to get the air conditioning working properly for the big meeting room. And I more or less got it working. I kind of had to turn it off and on a couple times, because when it was on, it would get a little too chilly, but when it was off, it would get a little too warm after a bit. And so it was just happened to go back and forth a bit, but it ended up being a little bit busier day yesterday. And then today was also another busy day at the office. But as much as it was throwing me off being in the office Monday, Tuesday, the plus side is that I've already gotten my office days out of the way. So the rest of the week I'm home, working from home. So that'll be good. We start up discipleship again tomorrow, and I'll be doing music for that. And I think, and then we have like a ice cream social for the homeschool co-op on Friday, which unfortunately is mandatory to go to because of we have to take care of paying the whatever fees are associated with that. And then I think there's something else my wife is supposed to be doing with that. So anyway, it's just going to be a busier week and all of that stuff. But yeah. Otherwise, really not much of anything going on. Pretty standard stuff.
Okay. Well, I'm definitely glad that the town hall was not too big of a problem, and that with the AC, that you're able to get things, relatively successful. So I'm definitely glad of that, and also glad there wasn't a major crisis going on where everyone was going to need you all at once. So that's great, and you can work from home the rest of the week, so that's also a great thing.
Yeah, makes things a lot easier. Especially because, obviously we always go late on recording the podcast, and so not having to worry about getting to the office will just make it a little bit easier, so I don't have to rush as much in the morning. I can just, even though I'm still not going to get as much sleep as I normally would on a regular night, it's, at least I don't have to rush in the morning to get to the office. I just do my normal stuff I would any other day working at home. So, but yeah. Anyway, what have you been playing this week?
So, today while I was over at, with my niece and nephew, we played some Minecraft for a bit. We didn't do a whole lot there. It was really just something that we played right before I was sort of going to go and get lunch for them. I don't know why, but this time in particular, I really noticed the frame rate difference between multiplayer on the Switch, and I was like, oof. It feels like there's even some delay between when I was trying to mine something and when it was going, from when I was pressing the button and from when it was actually happening on the screen. I was like, I do not recall this ever happening before, even though we've played this several times on the Switch. So that was weird, but we did a little stuff here and there, and I'm glad at least that the kids do have an idea on how to get stuff done. So granted, I was still helping them with crafting certain things, but you know, they had an idea on what they needed to do, so that was nice there. Additionally, my nephew and I, we played. Now I'm gonna need you to correct me on this because I know there are several different ones. Sonic Crossworlds, is that the full title? Racing?
Sonic Racing Crossworlds.
Sonic Racing Crossworlds. Okay, yeah. So I played that. That was my first time ever playing the game. Definitely enjoyable. I mean, granted, that's also been the very first Sonic Racing game that I have played. I have the All-Stars yeah, I have that one, but I just haven't played that one yet. But from what I played of that one, that was definitely fun. I'm not entirely certain what my nephew was talking about that game having new stuff and updates, because the Switch is still in airplane mode from when I originally said it, so I don't know what he's referring to. But granted, he also says that Minecraft gets new updates, and I'm like, that the Switch is in airplane mode, it's not getting new updates. So yeah, but it was definitely fun from what I played, and you know, I think once it's sort of a decent price on sale, I'll pick it up on Steam. But
yeah,
not a bad game. And last week, and this is something I've been looking forward to for quite a while, and I do have gameplay footage for this one, is Agent 64 Spies Never Die. Now, this is a game I have not talked about on the podcast for a year or so. And that was last time I spoke was mainly for the demo that I had played. And the full version of the game is out now, and you know, I got that day one, essentially. And it's good. It's fun. It's just as fun as I remember playing the demo, if not, you know, more so. And all I can say is, if you enjoyed GoldenEye, if you enjoyed Perfect Dark, this game is the next iteration of it, because it's that same type of gameplay, that same type of first-person shooter goodness, that, you know, that fast, frantic gameplay. It's just, you know, in a newer, high-res environments, and so, and I appreciate the fact that it's retro-esque with the models, but it's not, you know, just like it's like it's hi-fi polygons. Yeah. So it's like it's wonderful. I really like what I've been playing so far. I've played through the first several missions and doing whatnot, and I've been right now, just so I can also make sure I don't want to put too much on my plate. I've been playing it on the I think the Agent 64 difficulty. It's whatever is the medium difficulty. Playing that, you know, trying to do as many objectives as I can. Sometimes I've been failing, just like I accidentally got a hostage killed in the second mission, and I remember that was the problem I had with the demo, where I was like, all right, I need to actually properly sneak around and you know, take some guys out. But it's good, it's fun, and there, I think this is also in the clip, there's a very nice little, I guess, Easter egg / nod to the N64, because you start the game where Agent 64 is playing on his obviously N64 console and stuff. So, you know, it's this game was made with love, and the thing is, the Perfect Dark game, which we could have gotten from Microsoft, maybe they could have done a good job with it, but it probably just would have lacked a whole lot of the passion that is in this game. So I'm glad that while AAA studios might drop the ball, the indies and AA's will pick things up and, you know, give us the same and newer experiences of stuff that we played in the past. So, oh, and also, just for curiosity, I mean, my monitor would have been was already going to be, you know, capped out, but I said I'm just going to see what the frame rate for this game is, and it was on average between 475 and 500 FPS. So I couldn't obviously take full advantage of that, but
Right.
I just thought it was very, very fun just to gauge that. But yeah, it's definitely good, definitely fun, and I will try to keep playing some more of it just because I've been enjoying it so far. And then lastly, we have some more Pal World, and there's been quite a lot that has happened over the course of this past week. So I will say that I beat the final tower boss that was in the original version of the game. So in the original base game, there were only 5 bosses. I finally beat the last one, and he was definitely more difficult than the others, I think, just because of his abilities, especially with the teleportation. But overall, though, he wasn't a problem. I was able to beat him on the first try. Now, after that, the game said, all right, go explore more, go find the next boss tower. I'm like, all right, cool, I'll do that. And then I realized, oh, this new area is actually the sort of expansion that was in the early access, or it was considered an expansion, but now it's just part of the regular base game, which is the Faybreak area. And it's essentially just like a Japan-styled domain with areas with Japanese, I guess, yokai type of pals that are roaming the area. So very cool and stuff. The issue I have is that at this point now, there is quite a bit of spike in the difficulty between the areas, because you go from the previous area, which is the last area for the main game, or at least the base game, and they get into the new area, and the enemies here are a whole lot stronger, and it was just nasty. I mean, I've probably died at least 4 or 5 times in this area, just because I've been underestimating the enemies, or, well, mainly because of underestimating the enemies, and also because at this point in time, my gear is just not going to cut it at all, which was definitely an issue for quite some time. And I decided, okay, I really just need to go ahead and just grind away at my base and craft what I need, or at least craft some of the gear I'll need to be better equipped for the new area. So I did eventually get a new armor set, which is definitely a whole lot stronger than what I had before. And additionally, I also got a new drill, or a new mining drill. And the cool thing about this is that not only does it, drill ore at a faster rate, but it also doubles as the sort of pickaxe side, so I can cut down trees as well, and also cut other ore that I couldn't do before. So it's very useful in that regard. So getting those 2 things were definitely beneficial. At the same time, though, my shotgun still is not probably dealing enough damage, because these enemies are just way too tough. Or even with my armor, it buys me enough time, but I am still just not able to take out certain enemies, and I cannot even begin to raid some of these bases, because the enemies in there are just a bunch of ninjas, and they just dash at me, they swipe at me. Some of their pals are just insane, and now I'm at the part of the game where nearly every high-level pal has a laser beam attack, which is just insane. And it's like, okay, I expect that from the boss pals, but now just the enemy pals now can just fire lasers at me, and I'm just, no, I'm not about that life. So because of that, I also still decided, all right, I want to go to a few other areas as well, because I know that there are other sections outside of the main islands where I'm like, all right, I can explore, and there are definitely interesting things there. Like, there's this old, I guess, arena type, I guess you could say, like a coliseum, where there is sort of a boss pal you can face. There's also another area where it seems, I don't know what it is, but there was a point where I got a warning on my screen that said, dismount your pal now, or there will be anti-aircraft defenses that attack you. And I think to myself, okay, what is going on over here right now? It was, I did not know what to expect there. I mean, I dismounted, I climbed whenever I had to climb, but yeah, I haven't gone too far in that area, but it's just, I'm like, okay, what's going on over here? Like, when did this get added into the game? That we have like now anti-PAL defense systems. And then additionally, I decided, okay, let me also, I heard there were 2 legendary PALs that were located in the area. I said, all right, cool. I know this area. You know, I've been there before. Let me go and face them, or at least face one of them, because I know that at night, one of them is asleep and one is still awake. So I was like, all right, that's cool. I don't want to face both of them at the same time. That sounds stupid. Facing that, though, that PAL was still stupid, though. Even with the armor, my weapon is just still inadequate. And I died once. I said, okay, let me go get my stuff. Maybe I can lure the PAL outside of the arena and face him out in the desert. And I'll have, you know, a couple PALs that have advantage types still died to him. So I said, I mean, while I'm a bit higher level, at the same time, this is a legendary PAL, so I cannot treat it the same way as I would a normal PAL. So I'm just gonna have to come back later and try to fight both of them again. And yeah, so right now I'm at the point where I said I just need to get better weapons, and the only way I can do that is to, or at least more efficiently, is to get a better furnace. The problem is, in order to craft the furnace, I need to make more plasteel, and to make that I need oil, and I'm like, I don't have any oil at all. I mean, I've been getting it from enemy chests and item drops, but I haven't really been looking for oil because I haven't needed it. So I said, let me just go find an oil deposit. I'll make a drill, and I'll just sort of like set up as a secondary base, have my pals work on that, and then do a bit of grinding, and just sort of like do, maybe like on occasion I might like load up the game and just, you know, have it idle in the background, and it'll just like start mining stuff and start farming things while I'm doing whatever else I want to do, just so that way I can start getting stuff, the materials I need, so I can build better stuff. So that's right now where I'm at, but definitely making progress in the game, but there's just so much more in here that I have not even realized that I could experience. So I'm looking forward to seeing more stuff, because I definitely know there are other areas I haven't reached yet, but I definitely need to be better equipped before I go there. But yeah, that is everything that I have played this past week.
All right. Let's see here. What was the? Oh, I was thinking the anti air PAL, you know, attack things. It's really the Pokemon. It's really Nintendo that's firing that, because, you know, their lawsuit against the flying PALs. It's Nintendo company. they're the actual. But let's see here. What else was I going to say? Oh yes, regarding Agent 64. So of course, obviously that frame rate is glorious. Even if you can't fully experience it, and like that game looks fantastic. Watching you play that, I'm kind of like, man, I kind of want to play this one. But of course, right now I really don't need another new game. So, but yeah, that looks fantastic. I definitely can see that being something I would want to check out at some point in the future. What was I going to say about that? Yeah, I mean, I guess just, you know, I'm very impressed with like how good it looks. I mean, of course, because obviously it has very much a N64 style to it, but because of the lighting and everything else, it looks so much nicer. And of course, obviously it runs incredibly well. So that's really nice. But yeah, but it's like between that and at some point trying to get the Perfect Dark and GoldenEye recomps, like I very much want to check those out. And then, of course, there's that Metroid Prime Hunters recomp that I really want to check out because, I mean, playing that with mouse and keyboard, ooh, that's going to be nice. Because that's a game I've never finished. Like, I think I got through maybe the first 3 or 4 dungeon things, and then I stopped playing, especially because, you know, basically every one of the dungeons had the same boss. But, you know, being able to do all of that with the mouse and keyboard instead of having to use the touch screen would be really, really nice. So, but yeah, good stuff. All right, so my list is very short this week. I only played 2 games, but I spent a bunch of time, first of all, on Final Fantasy 13-2, and I really finished it this time. So, like, last week I had beaten the game, but then I decided that I wanted to go ahead and get the remaining endings and go for all the achievements, and some aspects of it were a lot more tedious than others. Like, in general, it wasn't bad going through to try to get those things, but there was one particular it was a set of achievements that were all connected to each other, or one achievement that a bunch of other achievements were dependent on. So in order to get all of the different fragments that you need, you have to do a variety of different tasks, one of which is going to this mini game area that I had mentioned before, that it's a casino. So basically you have slot machines and you have chocobo racing. The slot machines are exactly as interactive as you would expect, where at most you are putting in some coins, pulling the lever, and then stopping each of the things. But because of how fast it moves, I personally didn't think it was even like really even remotely possible to actually like stop it manually where you wanted to stop it. But you do have the option of just holding down the left button in order to just basically have it automated. So, but the goal with this is you are supposed to get up 10,000 coins. So it can't be 10,000 total. It's 10,000 minus whatever you spent in coins. So you have to get up 10,000 coins in general in order to get one of the achievements. And that's also required in order to get that you have to get 7,777 for a special coin that's required for one of the fragments. But of course you have to get that 10,000 coins for one of the achievements. And it got to a point where, like, I did this for a while, just walking around holding down the left button on the Steam controller. And unfortunately there wasn't really any way to cheese it. The best I could do was I could, cheat to get a bunch of, to have a bunch of money, which I had already previously done, and then use it to buy a bunch of regular casino coins. But you have to actually earn the coins through gambling, essentially. Thankfully it's not like real world money or anything, but you have to do either the slot machines or chocobo races. Chocobo races don't have much payout. You get some amount for winning the race, and if you bet and win on your bet, then you can get some back. But that's technically a much slower way to do it, and you don't actually control the chocobo directly. It's basically just, it's kind of more of a luck thing and various stats related to your chocobo, and it's a little bit more annoying from that standpoint. So I just decided I would do the slot machines primarily because technically it can be the fastest way to get it. It's just that it's so RNG based unless you're sitting there and doing it manually, and even then it's still very RNG based because of how fast the slots move. So I ended up just literally putting a rubber band around the left button and letting it sit. And it took probably like 4 hours, maybe 5 hours on Saturday of just waiting for that to finish it up. And it got to a point where, like, I had gotten enough bonuses to where theoretically I could get the remaining coins I needed just from doing some chocobo races. So I went and did some chocobo races for a bit, and then finally, after I'd done a handful of them, I got enough coins to where I was finally able to get that achievement. But that 7777 coins, the annoying thing about that is that, well, for that one, it's not, you have to earn them plus whatever you spend. You just have to get that much, period. So I had gotten it one time, and I got the fragment associated with it. But then the game had crashed on me for some reason. I can't remember exactly what it was. And I hadn't saved after I'd gotten that. And so I ended up having to re-go through to get that again. And it took a couple more hours just to do that. And then, more hours beyond that to actually get all the coins I was supposed to get. So that aspect was stupid. That was one thing that is like, there's no skill involved here. It's pretty much all luck based. And it was just, I couldn't find any way to like easily do it. Like I even looked into, okay, what if I get Cheat Engine? Can I use Cheat Engine and figure out how to do this? But it seemed like Cheat Engine was just a little more complicated than I wanted to use in order to figure it out, because there wasn't, like, nobody had specifically programmed to be able to get these particular things that you needed in order to get this achievement. And so I just had to suck it up and deal with it. But beyond that, there was a handful of like, oh, I have to, find a certain very powerful enemy in order to get this achievement. And the one particular enemy is actually the footage that's playing right now. And it's an enemy that scales with your level regardless of what you're at. So whether you're low level or high level, it scales with your level. But you have to beat it on normal difficulty. You cannot fight it on easy. And so, in order to get the achievement. And so that was actually a pretty tough fight. Part of it was, of course, that I didn't look up any strategy beforehand. So there are things that if I had realized I needed to do differently, then I would have, and it probably would have made the fight easier. But it still just was, it was a little tough. That was probably one of the harder fights I've done. But that does remind me, so I had mentioned before that one of the reasons why I had stopped playing back in 2023 was because I had come across a boss fight that was like an optional thing, or at least I thought it was optional. And I could not beat him worth anything. And it turns out that originally that version of the fight, well, actually, I can't remember if you're supposed to beat him and he's easier at that point, or if you're not supposed to beat him and you're supposed to lose, because it's been a while since I originally did that fight. But then when after you've beaten the game, you get this skill that allows you to challenge the more difficult fights and do fights that otherwise would be impossible. And so you can go back and you retry that fight, and the enemy's stronger, but of course you're also much stronger, and so it is much more easy to beat him. And then that is how you get one of the paradox endings that you can get. And yeah, there was quite a few like that. What was more annoying though was there's like 5 or 6 different specific fragments that you get from doing different things in a specific section of the game. But the problem is basically the way the section works is you go to one area and you go through a few things, which takes you into a new area. But that new area has like several sections tied to it, and all of those, until you complete all of them, until you complete all the back-to-back events and fights and everything else, there's some gap in there. But you can't like back out to the timeline like you can normally. And so if you miss out on doing any of the things that you do, which some of them you can't even do at one time, you have to redo this whole thing each time in order to get the fights that you need done completed to get paradox endings or get the fragments and whatnot. So then you end up having to redo this multiple times. And it's just a long enough sequence, even when you skip the cutscenes and make the fights, to where you only have to do one-hit kills or whatever, it's still just kind of a lengthy thing to have to redo and redo and redo and redo. So I eventually got through all that. Got my last fragment, which was related to getting... I had to complete the bestiary, which required first, I had to go through my bestiary, compare it to the list online, see, okay, which ones do I not have? I wrote all of them down, wrote down where they are located, then sorted the list so that I would know where I needed to go. Went through, only took me maybe a couple hours to get all the different things I needed. And then I thought I had all of them. I went to the guy that you're supposed to turn them into to get the last fragment. He's like, oh, you don't have all of them. And then I went through my list again, found out that one of the things I had to do was I had to go back to fighting one of the bosses that's in that long sequence I mentioned again. But I think you have to beat him. I can't remember if you're supposed to beat him or... yeah, you're supposed to beat him, but... because originally when I fought him, I had lost to him. Because if you don't beat him, you don't get that particular bestiary entry for him. And so it's just... I had to go through all that again. So then I went back, I got the last fragment, went through the final boss, was, watching through all the cutscenes because I decided, I'm going to enjoy the fact that I've gotten all this. And I get about halfway through the credits, and then I realize, oh no, I was probably supposed to turn on the paradox scope so that I could fight a more powerful version or whatever in order to get the last paradox ending, which was required for the very last achievement. And so I got to the end of the credits, and of course the scene didn't pop up. So I had to go back through, refight him. This time I just, turned it on the one-hit kills, skipped all the cutscenes. Then the final secret ending, paradox ending popped up. After that played, final achievement popped, and I finished. So, with that, I decided to go ahead and start Lightning Returns, which is, of course, the third Final Fantasy 13 game. I will say a couple things about this. For starters, this thing is still not a good port. The fact that it runs as poorly as it does, even on fairly powerful hardware, honestly, it's inexcusable. But, it's when Square Enix was not really making much effort in their ports, and, all three of these games were bad ports. So I got it, functional with the, using that mod program thing that helped me to, apply the necessary mods to get the game properly functional. And, the game basically, it maxes out at 60 FPS. There doesn't seem to be any way to go above that. And even on my laptop, there's still some stutters in areas. And it's even when I didn't have it, the settings completely maxed out, which realistically, even maxed out, that should be running fine. The fact that it was getting some stutters was rather frustrating. But I modified a couple of things, and then it was, getting pretty much a locked 60. And then when I played it a bit on my Steam Deck, that one actually surprises me how well it runs there. Because I knew that it was going to be 60 in battles and then more 30 in the towns. But surprisingly, I've been able to get more consistently around 60 in towns. So that's been good. So it's been pretty close to a locked 60. The only way to get that, though, is if you turn your options for frame rate are either fixed, which is a locked 30 FPS, or variable, which just depends on your hardware, but doesn't go above 60. So, but yeah, having it on variable on the Steam Deck, it's getting pretty close to a locked 60. Now, in terms of the differences in gameplay, Lightning Returns I thought that it was an action-based system, and it's not really. It's more action-y than the last two games. But basically, so the last two games, the way that you did it was you had the ATB bar would keep filling up, and then you would select a bunch of attacks, and you do it pretty quickly, and then it would just, do however many attacks you had room for on your ATB bar. And then, you just wait till it recharges, and then you select a bunch of attacks again, rinse and repeat. And this one, what it has is it has something kind of in some ways similar to Persona 5 and Expedition 33, where it's pressing a single button for the different attacks. But so it's a single button per action, and then you still shift different paradigms that have different that can have different actions tied to each of them, and that sort of thing. But once you use up all of the bar, you have to switch over to a different paradigm, which And then you can attack with that. And whenever the inactive paradigm is off to the side, then it charges a little bit faster and stuff. But so it's not really action based. You can guard in such a way that it's more similar to a parry. It's kind of, it's just a perfect guard essentially, rather than an actual parry. But when you do that, the timing on it is I should say the enemy attacks are slow enough to where it's really hard to find the timing for the parry type of window. And similar with what's the phrase I'm looking for? So some enemy attacks are just, it takes a long time for them to get their attack there, so it's really easy to accidentally guard too early. And of course, on top of that, guarding uses up some of your ATB, so it's even more risky from that standpoint. But then other times the attacks come rather fast, and so it ends up throwing things off from that standpoint. And I'm still kind of learning that aspect. But then on top of that, this game also has a time limit to it. In some ways, kind of similar to Majora's Mask, except that there's no time loop. And so it's like you have a set number of days, and then as you complete tasks for people, then you build up certain things that basically make it so that you can extend the amount of time. And you have like an ability that you can use occasionally that allows you to stop time to where the clock doesn't move forward, but everyone still moves normally. You and everyone else still move normally. And that just lasts for a short period of time. And then every day when it gets to 6 a.m., you automatically get pulled out of wherever you are. I think the only exception to that is if you're in the middle of a battle. But, yeah, I don't have a ton of comments on it yet, other than the fact that I'm still getting used to the battle system. And it's not quite what I thought it would be, but I mean, in some ways I'm kind of glad that it's not quite action-based, because of the fact that it feels like an evolution of the previous battle systems. But at the same time, I also kind of wish it was action-based, because then it would be a little more, I don't know, it would just feel a little more natural. Whereas this is not quite either the previous 13 games or an actual action-based one. And so I'm still very early in the game. I only made it to the second day so far. And so I have, lots of to do. From what I can see, I think they said 50 to 60 hours for completionist. Whether that'll actually be the case, I don't know for sure. I don't know if I'm going to go for all achievements yet, because I haven't played enough to where I've decided if I want to. I mean, I mostly went for it with 13.2 because after all that time, I just kind of felt like I wanted to do more, to feel like, okay, if it took me all this time to finally finish the game, I should actually finish the game. Plus, that was a little more satisfied because I did really want to get all the different fragments to feel like I completed it to my satisfaction. And then that put me so close to having all the achievements, and it's like, I might as well just go for all of them. But yeah, I can't think of much of anything else to say about this. So that's everything.
Okay, so question regarding the mod you had for Final Fantasy 13.2 as well as Lightning Returns.
Mm-hmm.
Does that apply for all three games or just those two in particular?
Yeah, it's basically it's a launcher
13.
that you can use that you can, by default, it applies like the patch that's needed so where the games will actually use 4 gigs of RAM, whereas the original when the games were launched, they could only use up to 2 gigs of RAM, and so then they would crash all the time if you have more than that in your system.
Yeah, that's weird. So I guess then if you're trying to do something with the original, or at least the first 13, you would use a different fix then? No. It
applies to all 3 games. It's just there's different patches per game but like that 4 gigabyte patch applies to all 3 of them, and then beyond that, there's different things that you can apply to each individual game.
Okay. My second comment would be regarding the boss fights that you had mentioned before about it scaling to your level. Is that the average level of your party or just like the highest level in your group? So, say if...
I'm guessing it's average, but I don't know for sure.
Okay, because I was just curious to know what would happen if, say, you had a severely underleveled character in your party, and then the boss shows up, and because of that one level being so low, then it's like, okay, you are 10, 15 levels lower than me, than you normally would be, just because this one person in the party is dragging you down.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just curious to know about that. I guess regarding, you mentioned the gameplay, but I know, and I guess sort of, you did mention this regarding some of the, what's what I'm looking for? With some of the, I guess, bonus fragments. So story-wise, what do you think of Lightning Returns?
You mean 13.2 or Lightning Returns?
Well, Lightning Returns as far as like continuing after everything
Gotcha.
that happened with Lightning Returns.
So continuing with after everything that happened in 13.2, there's like a big time jump, and I can't spoil anything about the story for 13.2, but I'm too early in the story to say a whole lot about it, other than the fact that the Japanese always have an interesting idea of what God is. That's about the extent of what I can say.
Okay. Yeah, I think those were all my questions that I wrote down.
All right. Good stuff. Well, before we get into the news, I want to make sure that anytime we have stuff from our listeners, that we go ahead and read that off early, because that way we get it out before we get super late and everything and are unable to get to it. So I wanted to first of all go over that comment we got last week from not 149 but from 148, where Joseph Rivera Santiago 0617 asked, should we jump out of this ship now, or is still hope? And he didn't write back to clarify what exactly he meant, but I think we could probably kind of go over this topic with the idea of answering it both from the perspective of whether it's time to jump from ship from PlayStation, but also time to jump ship from gaming in general, based on just the way everything is right now. So, I'll let you go ahead and answer that first.
Well, I think overall, I guess it partially depends on what you mean. And I'm saying this with regards to the PlayStation side, because if he is talking about, like newer stuff, the modern, console stuff / future, perhaps. But if you're just talking about as a whole, I would say you wouldn't necessarily have to. Like, I would say if you don't already, and you still want to just experience some good PlayStation games that aren't, that are on discs, that don't have any type of anti-consumer practices, you can go back. You can go back to, granted, I don't know what the prices of these things are, but if you could go buy a PS3, a PS2, a PS1, and play those games, you can, go back, experience the titles that really put PlayStation on the map and made the company very successful in the gaming industry. You could definitely go back. And I mean, granted, I know this one is definitely way more expensive because of the demand, but the fat PS3, that one is backwards compatible with PS2 and PS1 games. So if you could manage to get one at a decent price, that's going to be 3 generation of consoles that you can play on that one system. And even still, the PS4 still has some good stuff. Now, granted, if you're on the PS5, you could, play those PS4 games, and get better performance if there have been patches or newer versions released. You could do that. But so if you're going back, I would say that's perfectly fine. There's no need to just abandon Sony and PlayStation. But moving forward, I would probably recommend doing so, because I think the direction that Sony's headed in is not one where you're in the center of their mind. They are focusing more so on what can affect their bottom line and what can generate the most revenue for them. So I think in that sense, probably you would want to consider other options. But as far as gaming goes as a whole, I would say no. I would definitely say that no, gaming is not over. It's not finished. Like, there are even with a lot of the practices that are going on, even with all the the most disgraceful stuff, even with no more discs, digital media only, there are still plenty of good games that are not predatory on you, that still respect your time and your money. They do exist. And I mean, granted, like, again, we have Agent 64. That is a new game that is made with passion. It's made with love. And so for people who grew up with those type of games, then that's right there for them. And we'll sort of talk about this some later, but there's, just a renaissance of remastered games from older generations. And these are games that really could use a remaster or a newer port. It's not like saying, oh, we've got our 50th rendition of The Last of Us Part 1 that's coming out. It's like, no, we've got games that haven't been released since the PS2, the PS1, other console generations. It's like, okay, yeah, we've got the the Godzilla Destroy All Monsters Melee, that hasn't been seen since the 5th generation. We've got the Toy Story collection of games that have not been seen since the, N64 and PS1 days. We've got other games. We've got the Lord of the Rings War for the North game that just released last week. So like there's a surgence of games that are making a comeback, and I think that it's beautiful that these games are coming back, because either there are people who haven't played these games in a long time that would love to play them again on newer hardware, or there are people who have never played them or experienced them before, and they have that chance now, which is just beautiful. So I don't think that gaming is, I don't think there's really a need, and especially if, I mean, not to just gloat or anything, but especially if you're on PC, there's a lot of options there for you to go into, one way or another. And even if you don't buy newer stuff, even if you never bought a newer AAA game, or if you never bought a game that was made from this year onward, you still have decades of games going back that you can go and buy and enjoy, because that's just what's right there. And even if it's not on Steam, GOG has years upon years upon years upon years of games that are being preserved, that you can go buy them and you own them. You can go back in the future, and they are also going to try to support these games to make sure that you can still play them in the future, which is wonderful. So no, I do not think that gaming is dead or is going to die. I think depending on where you are, it might be better to consider switching around. Even if you don't say get off a platform completely, like with PlayStation, you might want to consider trying to migrate, even if just a little bit. Because I would say don't put all your eggs in the PlayStation basket, because it is going to cause you problems later on down the road. But those are my thoughts on the matter.
Yeah, very well said. Some things that I would add to that. Well, for starters, on the PlayStation side, I mean, I definitely think that it's a good idea to start moving away from there. Even if you have a big library on there, just start moving away. I'm not saying completely abandon it, but just consider, hey, maybe, next generation moving away. And in the meantime, like, especially because we don't know what the cost is going to be next generation for the next console. We don't know if it's going to be $1,000 or more or less, or what. Especially with the way that the RAM costs and storage costs have gone up so much, who knows what it's going to be. And even if they subsidize it, it's probably still going to be expensive. And you're just going to have to deal with all the potential issues that come with them ending physical games and only having the one storefront. Because while certainly in the short term they will have codes in a box, that's not going to last long, because it didn't last long with PC, and it's highly unlikely that it will with PlayStation. So I don't think that necessarily completely abandoning PlayStation is necessary, especially if you have a lot invested in it. But if you're at a point where you're just completely tired of what they're doing, it might be at least worth considering starting to move away. And there's a variety of different ways you can do that, whether you decide that you want to just go with a different console like the Switch 2, or you want to try out Xbox. I mean, to an extent, you're going to be dealing with some of the same stuff regardless. Switch 2 at least has some fully physical games still, and will probably for a while. But they're obviously also, pushing the key cards thing more and more. Most third-party games are key cards, with very rare exceptions. And so there's challenges from those standpoints. Now, moving over to PC, I mean, obviously, if you've listened to us at all, you know that we are big on PC. You know that's the primary place we play. In fact, I think it's basically the only place that Justin plays anymore is PC and Steam Deck. Whereas I still dabble some with the Switch 2, and both the 3DS and Vita. But the main thing is that you don't have to build an expensive PC. You could find something used, go through Facebook Marketplace or whatever, find something that it doesn't even necessarily have to be super powerful. And you could get by, buying something for $1,000 or less. And while, yeah, it's a little more expensive to start off, it's also something that will last you a lot longer, does a lot more, has a lot more freedom. You don't have to pay for online. You get a lot more game deals and a lot better deals. You don't have to deal with dynamic pricing like what you have on PlayStation. And you don't, yes, while everything is essentially digital, there's very rare exceptions. You can make physical copies of your games if you want, especially with stuff from GOG, but even Steam games to a certain extent, you can do that. And so you have the ability from that standpoint. But if you don't want to go that route, there are different handhelds that are available, even if you're just dabbling a little bit. And even if you go for something weak, that still gives you a lot of games available to play. And games that you, in many cases, are going to be able to run better on old hardware from 10 plus years ago than you could run it on your current gen consoles. Just because of the fact that they never got updated or they never got brought forward, that sort of thing. There's lots of games that were on the PS3 and PS2 generation that never were brought forward. That at furthest, they came up to maybe PS4. And even then, they're still pretty gimped in terms of what you can get compared to what you could get if you do it on a PC from around the same time or a little bit later. So you have a lot of freedom there. And you could go for like a used handheld, like a Steam Deck is still a very great system, because while you can't play everything that's brand new, there's so much you can play on there that it's ridiculous. I mean, and there are some modern games that you can still play on there. They're not all going to play the greatest in terms of performance, but you can still play them. And just the massive number of games you have available to you are there. Now, I would never say go out and buy a brand new Steam Deck right now, because it's just way too expensive. But if you can find a used one for a good price, like, I would say I would not spend more than like $600 on a Steam Deck unless it was brand new. And even then, I would say don't go above the original MSRP. Don't spend the $950 on it. If you could get a Steam Deck OLED for $650, I would say that's worth it. But there's that. Of course, obviously, there's also the option of like some of the special handhelds that are various ones. Like there's Android-related handhelds that can also still run SteamOS. There's that one handheld. I want to say, I think it's the Anthor, maybe the one that's modeled after the 3DS. It's a clamshell design, but has dual joysticks and everything. That seems like it's a really solid handheld. And frankly, if I didn't have a 3DS, I would really want one of those. But I mean, there's things like that. We're getting like random ports all the time. Like something I saw today, and it's still kind of in the early stages, but there is a new 3DS port of Breath of the Wild. And I mean, Video Game Esoterica showed it a little bit. And I mean, it's pretty rough. Like it's definitely nowhere near the level of the Switch version, but it's still like, that's pretty cool. I mean, yes, it's essentially a demake, but it's still cool that even with what little they have of the game completed, that it's even there. And it has the map on the bottom touch screen and stuff like that. And it's just like, this is cool. I want to check it out at some point. But yeah, you just have so many options. And if you're anything like us, there are probably games from previous generations that maybe you heard were really good, but you've never had a chance to play. And because of the fact that they're not on current gen consoles, you've never had the opportunity. This could be a great opportunity to check those out. Whether it's pulling out an old console and playing on there, or getting an old console and playing on there, or just emulating it on PC. And in some cases, even just having native PC versions of those games that in most cases you can still play with the controller and everything if you want to do that. And you just have so many options. And then if you just want to go with the old consoles, you don't want to do PC at all, a lot of those you can get very cheap. Like Justin mentioned, the fat PS3 would be a great option if you have the ability to. I think it's the 80 gig one, I believe, that still had backwards compatibility with PS2, but it might have just been the PS3 fat, period. And having those 3 gens available to you is fantastic, because there's a ton of great games across those 3 generations. And yeah, PS4 has great games too, and PS5 has some. I think it has less, but it still has some. But there's a lot of options out there. And so my personal thing to kind of get the TLDL of all of this is that gaming does not have to be dead. Whether you choose to move forward with the next gen consoles and everything else is entirely up to you. But there are so many options available to you that whether you decide to switch over to PC if you're not already on PC, or go to just older consoles, you have just such a wealth of options. So I would never give up. I would not give up on this hobby as long as you can afford to buy even older games. And in fact, older games in many cases are going to be the better choice, because there's just so many great ones. And then just do indies as well, because there's a lot of great indies. Find something that looks cool to you and try it out. And if you go through Steam directly, then you can refund if you don't like it. Same with GOG. So.
And one thing that I'll also sort of add, to your point is, even if you got a Steam Deck or just got a handheld and you got games on there, the fact is that, say you decide, okay, I really don't want to play on here, or I just would rather just get more powerful hardware. The games you bought will still be there on whatever new piece of hardware you get, because they're part of your library, your collection. So they're not tied just to, okay, this single device or this piece of hardware. No, it's all across PC. You have the freedom to be on the hardware you want with your games. So you're not locked, forced, or strong-armed into one particular device. So you don't have to get a Steam Deck just to play Steam games. So just want to also add that bit of info there.
Yep. And then on top of that, regardless of what hardware you get, you don't have to worry about the company being able to take it away from you to keep you lock you out of playing your games. Yes, there will be some cases, depending on which platform you go with, where if they delist a game, they might pull it out of your library or make it unplayable, like with Ubisoft and The Crew. But that's a very rare thing, and usually even if a game gets delisted, you'll still have access to it. And you don't have to worry about hardware bans like you have to worry about potentially with Nintendo or PlayStation. I don't know about Xbox, what theirs is, but you don't have to worry about that on PC. And if for some reason, even if they did have some way on Windows to do that to you, you can just switch over to Linux, to SteamOS, and you'd be all set. So, good topic.
Indeed.
All right, we have two other things here, one of which is from Emu Runner 13, otherwise known as my nephew, and he said, "Hi, Uncle," and I'm just going to say, "Hi, Micah." I'm just using the same tone that he uses when he talks to me. Okay, and then we also had a comment on the last episode from user @RobThanatos, and he said, "Peak podcasts clapping emoji." So, thank you, Rob Thanatos, Rob Death, for the comment, or Thanatos from Hades. Yeah.
Indeed. Thank you kindly.
All right. Well, let's get into our news topics for this evening. So there's a few things we didn't get to cover last week because we just ran out of time. So I figured we could kind of start with some of those. But first and foremost, I do want to talk about this GTA 6 extended look that's coming on August 27th, first to Netflix, and then 6 hours later coming to YouTube. What are your thoughts on this?
I mean, I understand that there's a whole big marketing thing with Rockstar, and they're trying to figure out what the best way to do it is, and they, can work with Netflix, get a deal, and, it's like, hey, for every view you get, we'll share whatever revenue you get from that. So I see that, but at the same time, I really cannot understand the people who have not owned, like, if you already have a Netflix subscription, that's one thing. But if you are going out of your way to pay for a Netflix subscription just to watch a GTA 6 trailer that is going to go live on YouTube 6 hours later, that's just sad. I mean, you really lack the willpower to wait 6 hours. You would rather pay, I guess the cheapest tier now is like $12.99 with ads or something like that. You would rather do that than just wait 6 hours. And I mean, sure, it's, not a whole lot of money, but why would you do that? Why would you go and pay for a trailer? Something that's going to be shown live for free elsewhere. It just not make sense to me. Like, I've heard people say, "Oh yeah, I already got my Netflix subscription so I could watch." I'm like, why? it's just, they know people are going to do it, which is obviously why they're doing it, but it just not makes sense as to why people would do that. And I feel like even on Rockstar's end, like they could still generate buzz and hype without having to lock it behind a Netflix subscription. I mean, people will flock to any bit of GTA 6 news that is presented. Yeah. I mean, even, years upon years ago, I heard about this one guy who would say, "Oh, I got the leaked copy of GTA 6," and made, I don't know, tens, if not upon hundreds of videos, saying like, "I've got the leaked copy of GTA 6. It's like, dude, come on. I mean, I'm sure that, anyone who isn't smart enough to know better, or, kids, will go to your videos and say, "Oh, wow, he's got a leaked copy of GTA 6. But, anyone with, critical thinking skills will say, "Okay, no, this is why this is false." So people obviously are going to flock to whatever bit of information they can have. If Rockstar didn't put it behind Netflix and just said, "Hey, we're releasing this extended look at this time, this day," people are still going to go for it anyway. There's still going to be a whole lot of marketing hype around it. So I don't get why they're doing it, unless they just want to generate extra buzz, extra noise by creating some kind of controversy by saying, "Oh, look, we're doing something controversial. We're going to have a paid version, a paywall, but at the same time, people are going to watch it for free, and people are going to be divisive over this." And it's like, okay, maybe that's also part of your plan, just to generate extra, talk of the game. But I just don't really see the point when people will go and watch it regardless. Like, I don't get it. But, regardless, I think that the saddest group here are just the people who are paying for Netflix just to watch the trailer. Now, obviously, I'm not watching it one way or another because I have no interest in the game. But if you are interested in the game, don't pay for the subscription. Just wait 6 hours. You can wait 6 hours, depending on when it's even going live. Yeah, it's like it's going live at like 12 p.m. Pacific time. You might be at work anyway, so just wait until you get off work and watch on YouTube. So just don't do that, guys. Come on. Save yourself $13 or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, this whole thing, well, the reality is that the way I see it is that the reason they're doing this is because they're testing the waters. They're trying to see what they can get away with. And the reality is that if enough people subscribe to Netflix to watch this, this is going to become more of a normal practice in the future. And I think that there could very well come a point when the only way that you're going to be able to see trailers for big games, or in some cases any games, is to pay extra for that. GTA 6 can easily get away with it, simply because it's so huge and because they still haven't shown gameplay. But when you consider the fact that you are literally paying to see a commercial, you are paying Netflix so that you can watch a commercial, even if it's a 2-hour commercial. And I would not be surprised in the least. I would actually laugh very hard if it turned out that this entire extended look, that probably like all but maybe 5 minutes of it is not gameplay. If it's basically them talking about everything they went through, character, concept art, and all this time spent talking to the developers, maybe occasionally showing, like cutscenes or whatever. And then at the very end, they show like 2 seconds of actual gameplay. And, then people still defend it because they want to. Yeah, it's just, I don't think this is a good thing at all. While I understand, from the standpoint, if you already have a Netflix subscription, then it's not going to be an issue for you. I still think it sets a dangerous precedent. because it starts with GTA 6, but that's not where it's going to end. If enough people pay for this. Now, if everyone decides to actually be cheap, which I think will be kind of a mixed bag, I think there's going to be more people paying for it than not. Or rather, I should say more people paying for it than we would want to see pay for it. Even if we wanted to set the bar as low as saying like 100 people or less, I think there's probably going to be thousands of people who subscribe to Netflix just so that they can watch this trailer right when it comes out. And I also wouldn't be surprised if some idiot streamers decide, I'm going to stream this when it shows up on Netflix, even though that would be a violation and they get copyright claims on their channel. But yeah, I don't see this as a good thing for anyone, especially allowing them to charge you to watch something that's supposed to be free. It's not supposed to be, they're not supposed to get money from us to advertise. Getting money from Netflix, or, they're supposed to be paying someone else to put their ad up, not the other way around. But instead, they've already easily made back their entire budget and then some with all the pre-orders. And now they're milking it even further by having a bunch of people subscribe to Netflix so that they can get whatever kickbacks they get from people watching this extended look. And it's scummy is what it is. And of course, as I've stated many times, I don't care about GTA. I just don't. But I just don't see this as a good thing. And I have a feeling that a lot of people who will defend this are just not going to see what the ramifications are of putting money towards this and how it's going to impact things in the future. It'll start with this, but it will expand far beyond this for sure. So, yeah, we'll see what happens with all of it. But I know I probably I will maybe check out some highlights just for the sake of having the knowledge of what's actually there. But I'm expecting it to be basically exactly the same thing as every other GTA game.
Yeah, that's I never would have thought of that perspective of this is them trying to move games over to a pay to view model, which I can understand. Not understand it, but I can actually see that happening. We've sort of seen this happen with other things, like especially with certain sports games. I know primarily what this happened like last year with football, where games were behind an Amazon subscription essentially, and you couldn't watch it if you didn't have one. So I guess that mentality is now shifting towards games, which like you said, these are advertisements for games. Why are we paying for an advertisement when they should be the ones paying for the advertisement? So it's definitely corporate greed. There's no reason why this should be happening, and anyone who defends it is there's no reasoning with them, because they see this as a positive for somehow, and they think paying for the privilege to watch a trailer is beneficial for whatever reason. So yeah, I if this even happens, I could even possibly see this somehow going to where the Game Awards show could eventually be, behind some sort of subscription where, hey, we're going to stream it on whatever service. And it's like, okay, cool. It's like, why? Why are you doing that? It's been free to view forever, and now all of a sudden, now I have to go and buy a subscription to Netflix or Hulu or Paramount Plus or whatever just to watch it. And I'm like, no. I'm not paying to watch it. I will catch the highlights later. I will, see whatever game trailer someone posts online later on. And a lot of times, even the companies will go ahead and post their trailers for these games after the award
Very
show
true.
anyway. So I'm not going to pay just to watch this stuff. No, thank you. I respect my money enough and myself to go and do that.
Yep.
But yeah, that's definitely a great point. I never considered that, but I think you're right.
All right. Well, let's move on into our next topic, and I'll let you pick out which one you want to talk about.
All right. So, I guess just to sort of, well, I guess I'll jump to something a bit newer, and also I guess one of the happier topics for the evening. So, sort of like as I mentioned earlier, The Lord of the Rings: War in the North was released recently last week for the PS5. It was released for PC on Steam, and I can't remember if it was also released on other platforms as well.
I'm pretty sure it was
like
at least came to Switch too. I'm not sure about Xbox, but I would assume it came to Xbox as well.
Right, I would think so as well. But apparently, this is not the only game that is coming back. So, Aspyr, who has put out remasters of older games in more recent times, they've teased that this is not the only Lord of the Rings game we can look forward to. So in a press release, Aspyr said that fans can look forward to even more classic releases by Aspyr from the beloved franchise in the future. Now, obviously, that doesn't say which games will be coming forward and when we could release them, but games that we haven't seen in a long time, games that some people probably have even played or heard of, could be coming soon. So I have quite a few thoughts on this, but what are your thoughts?
Well, I think it's fantastic to hear that. I never really played those games. I did at one point get the PS2 versions of both Two Towers and Return of the King. And I tried Two Towers a bit, and I just couldn't get into it. I didn't even bother trying Return of the King. I ended up just selling them, unfortunately. But that's something I've always wanted to like it. It's just, at the time that I tried it, it wasn't quite what I was expecting. And so I definitely would be very interested in checking these out whenever they come over, because, having native PC versions, it's, undoubtedly going to have better frame rate, visuals, and so on and so forth. I feel like this would be the perfect opportunity to try these out. And it's much like we were saying earlier, when you get these classic games brought forward that were so beloved, that's more of a great opportunity to just experience some of the old stuff you may have missed out on. And so I'm very excited about that. Now, War in the North, I didn't really look much into it because I don't even think I'd heard of this one before. What type of game is it? I mean, obviously it's Lord of the Rings, but
I think this one's more of an action adventure.
Okay.
And I think they either introduced co-op or the game had co-op, but they made it easier for single player, stuff that you can do now. So that's sort of like the type of game it is, and it has some RPG type of elements, but it's like an action adventure from what I've heard and seen.
Okay, I'll have to put that on my wish list and keep an eye on it for adding to the library of games that I may never play. That's all my thoughts on it.
Yeah, I definitely agree that this is fantastic. And also similar to you, I had never heard of War in the North before either. And at first when I saw the game, I said, they released a new game. It looks like it. I was like, it doesn't look like it's a really brand new game. Like, what is this? Then I realized, oh, this actually is an older game, so that's why. But I was like, all right, that's interesting. I looked into a little more to it because I'm like, all right, is this like newer stuff? Are they gonna do like some Rings of Power type of stuff in here? And be like, okay, no, apparently, it's separate from like the main canon of the books and the movies, even though the likenesses of the movie versions of the characters do make an appearance in the game. But it is like a separate thing, but it does still respect the source material, so that's always a benefit and a plus in my book. But it does seem interesting. But I would like, though, to see the older games come back, because I didn't play I played Two Towers on the Game Boy Advance. That's vastly different from the console version.
That's great. I love that one. I never got very far in it, but I actually have it on my Steam Deck.
Yes, like I went through the game. I played as Legolas just because I was like, all right, I'm just gonna keep sniping at every enemy that comes on the screen and stay safe. Although I really got into trouble with the ring wraiths in several different times. I was like, I really need to do better that way. But I really enjoyed it there. But I never played the console version. I played the console version of Return of the King, and I got up to I think right after you fight the King of the Dead, because as you leave, for some reason, I think there was either a glitch or there was something I just wasn't doing right, and I could not get past that level. But from what I played, it was pretty decent, I'd say. So if those games could come back, I think that would be great. And another game, which I think the article mentions, which I would be interested in playing, would be The Third Age, which at the time of when it originally released, and for a good while, I wouldn't have been interested in it because it's a turn-based RPG, and that was still in my turn-based games, gross, yuck, I'm not touching that. But now that I've come to appreciate turn-based games, I'm like, okay, I would be willing to try a turn-based Lord of the Rings game. So, I would be fine with if that came back. So like if they bring these games back, sure, do it. Additionally, I don't know how feasible this would be. I mean, I think it would be possible, but if they even had, a version where they re-release the games but have like the console and the handheld version of these games, I think that would be nice to have a nice little bonus for those games as well. So you have both the console version that would be considered the definitive version, but you could also play the handheld, which is more like a Diablo-esque type of game. So I think that would be great if they could just bundle both versions together. If not, I still would be great and fine with playing the that console version. But yeah, definitely having more of these Lord of the Rings games coming back would be great. And while I don't know much about it at all, I would still be willing to also play the Hobbit game that was made as well. Yeah. Like I said, I have little knowledge of the game, but I would be willing to give it a shot.
Indeed. All right. Going into our next topic here. Pokemon Bank, which originally came out in 2014 for the 3DS, is officially shutting down on Friday, February 26th of 2027. Basically giving, for those unfamiliar with what Pokemon Bank was, it was essentially a way for people to have, it was basically the equivalent of having the PC box on the Pokemon games, except that it was online so that you could transfer Pokemon between games very easily and all of that. I did use it previously before, so I have some familiarity with that. I don't know if I have anything stored on there anymore, but regardless of any of that, I guess I should also point out it was already succeeded by the Pokemon Home application on the Switch, which is also available on mobile, and that has access to all of the different eras of Pokemon. But once it gets to February 26th of 2027, you will no longer have the option to connect to Pokemon Bank, and the connectivity between Bank and Home will be severed. So, I can't remember if Pokemon Bank was something you had to pay for and or the
No,
same?
that was free.
Okay. So, yeah. Well, I thought I remembered there being some sort of subscription thing you had to pay for, but maybe I'm just remembering something else. Regardless, what are your thoughts?
I think this is a very disappointing thing. I think this is something that really doesn't need to go away. I mean, sure, it's something that you had if you have 3DS and 3DS hasn't been sold or manufactured in years. So like, it's not that I just don't really see why they would have to get rid of it, because sure, it's for older hardware and people are probably going to transfer the games over, but not everyone is going to necessarily transfer their Pokemon over to newer games, especially if they want to play like the older games, especially if they want to play Omega Ruby or Alpha Sapphire, if they want to play Sun or Moon, if they want to play those games, then sure, they want to transfer their stuff there. Or maybe they may even want to say, okay, I've got my Pokemon here, but I'm over. I want to start a new save or something like that, and I'll want to bring my Pokemon back. You lose that opportunity because they're shutting down the servers. And I know there's the idea of, hey, servers cost money, but how much is Nintendo spending on, just the information of these Pokemon, just the data of the Pokemon? It's not like these are full games. These are just like individual Pokemon.
Yeah.
Which can't be, there can't be that much data that they have to spend, a lot of money on servers. Would it cost more than 32 terabytes of storage? I highly doubt that. I would probably say at most it's probably going to be, 5 terabytes of data for the Pokemon. It's like it's just like the individual stats of the Pokemon and the Pokemon themselves. It's not like you're actually having any full games on there. So it's not like it's really a whole lot of storage that they're working with. Additionally, Pokemon makes a lot of money for Nintendo. So you're saying like you can't earn back that money easily through every other merchandising thing you do, any other type of I guess, basic game sales, any type of anything that they do, you can't make enough money where it's like, okay, we already paid for our server fees like twice over, within like a whole quarter. We got the revenue from one quarter paid for a whole year, essentially. You're saying you can't do that for this one service?
Yeah.
I mean, I use Pokemon Bank quite a bit. Because I don't think it was, you couldn't use it for the DS, but I definitely used whatever was right up to the DS just to help get my DS Pokemon over to Pokemon Y. And I was like, all right, cool, get the games over here. And I was like, all right, cool, I got this big bank. All right, I'll put my favorite Pokemon, get ready for whatever got for Sapphire. I was like, all right, cool, transfer them over there. It's like, all right, cool, I'll get ready to transfer them over to Pokemon Moon. And I was like, all right, cool, transfer them over there. I'm like, it's working, it's great, it's awesome, it's free. Why end a good thing? But I mean, I guess maybe if there's a reason why you can pay for it, then it does, like, all right, hey, let's do that. So I really just, it really doesn't make sense to me. And I mean, also, if you have your Pokemon on these servers when it closes, then you effectively lose them. They will be deleted. So you definitely don't want to keep them on there. So you have to make a decision between then and now where you want your Pokemon to be. And if you, which is really kind of sad, if you go later on down the line and say, hey, I never played Pokemon X or Y, I never played Sun or Moon, and I was like, all right, cool, I just bought a used copy. I'm like, hey, this is great, I'm enjoying the game, I would like to go take the Pokemon from this version of the game and put them on Brilliant Diamond. I want to put them on my Switch games and stuff like that. It's like, oh no, you can't do that because this service is shut down. I'm like, no, don't do that, please. There's gotta be a better way to do it than just axing it altogether.
Yeah.
Sure, nothing lasts forever, but at the same time, I think for something that is probably does not cost Nintendo that much because there's not that much data to have to back up and store and transfer, this is something that they could easily just have tucked in their pockets and just like, all right, cool, it exists. And we could probably forget it exists just because it doesn't cost us that much money. Where it's like, oh yeah, that's right, we were paying for servers. Oh yeah, how much was that again? Oh, only like 500,000 yen. That's like what, $1,000 a month or something like that. It's like, yeah, we could do that. So like, I just don't get it. Like, it's like really, it's really just a problem for fans, you know, especially for people who, you know, really love Pokemon, they grew up with it, they wanted to get, you know, the newer versions of the game, or like I said, for people who probably just wanted to get who got the newer stuff and then said, hey, I want to go back, kind of like how I started later on and said I wanted to get the older games. And I did that. You know, if someone did that very same thing, they still won't be able to transfer the Pokemon, whereas I could go transfer the Pokemon from my older games to my newer games because the service was available. But people won't be able to do that because they're shutting down the Pokemon Bank. So I think this is a bad thing, but if you are using it, I definitely strongly recommend that you go ahead now and decide where you want Pokemon to be, if you want to have them on your 3DS or on your Nintendo Switch, because like I said, at the very least, do not leave them on the bank, otherwise you will lose them forever.
So I mean, I definitely didn't really think about it from that perspective, mostly because I just didn't use it that much. Like, I think I used it to transfer, if I remember correctly, I think there was some way that I was able to transfer some Pokemon maybe from Platinum over, but honestly, I don't remember if there was a way to do that or not. If there was, then I did that, but I may just have only used it for some of the Pokemon from X. But yeah, so like for me, this doesn't really affect me. I mean, like I'll check and see if I have anything on Pokemon Bank, but I'm pretty sure I don't. The only real reason why like I see that as less of a big deal, at least just from my perspective, is the simple fact that I don't know how many people would still be using it. And so I mean, like, if people still have stuff on it, then yeah, they need to make sure they just get it off there. At least, you know, they can there's a mobile app for Pokemon Home and you can transfer stuff over to there. But yeah, I mean, I guess I also kind of look at it as if you haven't used Pokemon Bank in a long time and you never transferred over your Pokemon to Pokemon Home or whatever, were you ever really going to do anything with them? And I mean, like, on the one hand, I could see, you know, there's still the memories attached to it. There's not really a good reason for them to shut it down other than the fact that maybe it's just not being used that much. But I mean, I definitely see your perspective as well. Like, I don't disagree with you from that standpoint. I'm just looking at it purely from the perspective of someone who didn't really use it all that much. And even when I did, I kind of look at it as, this is old stuff. It doesn't really matter anymore. Then I can see that. Though I will say, actually, you know, thinking about that made me think more about the 3DS, and I never played Sun or Moon because I basically, like, I played X and I played that a couple of times and I enjoyed that. But then even though I have Alpha Sapphire, but I wasn't really a fan of Gen 3 anyway, so I never really played very much of it. And so then when it came time to play Sun and Moon, I wasn't super interested. But thinking about it, I'm kind of like, you know, maybe one of these days, maybe I will actually check out one of those. I mean, I don't know if one of them is better than the other or what have you, but it might be worth checking out. And of course, you know, my 3DS is modded, so I could very easily get it on there. Obviously, if I could get a physical, that would be ideal, but if I can't, well, it's like, hey, if they don't want to sell it to me, then they can't be upset with me for just downloading it. I mean, so yeah. But yeah, I guess I would just agree with you then and say that, if anybody still has Pokemon stored on there, just make sure to get them transferred off while you still can. You got, 5 months until then? 6 months. Yeah, a little over 6 months. So you got some time. Just make sure that you take care of it. I don't know if there's any easy way to do that. Though that did get me thinking about something else that I had thought about recently, and I'm probably going to end up doing, because, there's both the Pokemon recomps for Red, Blue, Yellow, and I think Gold and Silver right now. Maybe it's just one of the two. And then there's also the recomp of Pokemon Stadium. And I was just thinking, man, I could transfer... I could get the recomp of Stadium, and then any of the Pokemon that I'm playing on PC, with Red and Blue, with the Red recomp, I could just transfer those over to Stadium and be, able to do that again. And then get back into the mini games that were more fun than they had any business being, especially the sushi, the Lickitung sushi one. That one was fun. But yeah. Anyway. That's all I got. All right. Do you want to cover any more of the topics?
Sure. I guess,
You do still have that Valve topic. We probably should talk about that.
Yeah. So, over in the EU, Valve has been hit by, well, not directly, but customers have been hit by a cyber attack. Essentially what happened is that one of Valve's logistics companies they're working with had leaked information for customers as in a cyber attack, and the company is called, the partner is called Siva Logistics, which handles hardware fulfillment in Europe. And they told Valve about the attack that happened August 7th, and no personal information. Well, no personal information regarding payments have been, or passwords have been leaked, but just basic stuff like customer names, addresses, countries, phone numbers, and Steam account email addresses have been leaked, and that has essentially put customers in a vulnerable position for phishing attempts, where someone pretending to be Valve will contact them and say, hey, we've got we need to verify your information, or hey, your reservation for a Steam machine is available, so you can just go here, enter your information, and get your Steam machine. And that has been essentially what has happened. So the issue is not with the leak itself, but the phishing attempts that have arisen from it. And so Valve has sent out an email for people who would be impacted by it, saying, hey, this has happened, what this means for you, here are things that you can consider doing, what Valve is doing, and things that you can do to help keep your account safe. So it's an interesting situation here, but what are your thoughts on the matter?
Well, one thing I will say is that obviously it's unfortunate that this happened. I'm glad that it wasn't actual payment information or anything truly sensitive that leaked, and that it wasn't actually through Valve directly, but rather through a partner that does the hardware fulfillment. Obviously, anyone who's gotten these emails, especially those who, well, obviously it would be the people who have been looking forward to getting some form of Valve hardware, whether it's Steam controller, Steam machine, or Steam Deck, I guess probably as well. Those people obviously just need to be extra careful on those things and make sure that they take extra precautions. And this is just where security awareness training comes in really handy, because I haven't seen any examples of the emails, but obviously if you are heavily in that world like I am, then it can be easier usually to spot those things. But either way, you just have to be extra careful. So, hopefully nothing worse happens in the future. You know, we certainly don't want to have a major data breach that's going to cause a lot of problems and, you know, put out payment information and whatnot that could put a bunch of people in a position of having to cancel credit cards and so on and so forth. But yeah, I don't really have a whole lot more thoughts on that. I mean, if this was actually something that had happened directly with Valve, then I definitely would have more of an issue with it. But knowing that the extent of the breach is nowhere near as significant as it could have been makes me more just, I guess I'm just not super worried about it. So.
Yeah, I definitely agree that it's good. I mean, this situation obviously isn't good, but at least it's not something where Valve themselves were compromised and a whole lot of customer information was just put out there, and probably also people having their entire accounts vulnerable. So at least this information is somewhat limited, where it's just like, okay, as long as you can identify a phishing attack, then you'll be safe. And also, I guess on that end, I would say is that if you have pre-ordered, reserved any type of Steam hardware and you're waiting for an email, I would say if you have received something, probably one of the safest things you could do is just don't click the link in the email or respond to the email, but rather either go onto the Steam launcher itself and go to your account that way, and you'll obviously find information there. Or if you just go into the Steam website in the browser, you can go there, log into your account, and then see if your reservation is available. Like those are two ways you can do it without compromising your accounts, just because an email said so. So I would definitely recommend confirming that way. And I mean, if you have an email and you have received what is a phishing scam, I mean, I would say probably one of the best things to do, apart from just ignoring or deleting it, is try reporting it to Valve or someone else. But that's really, I guess, the best you can do in this situation. And maybe also another thing is possibly to change the password for your Steam account as well, just in case.
Yeah, definitely. Agreed on all fronts. All right. I think we can go ahead and call it there for the night. So let's get into our recommendations and dissuasions. Why don't you start us off?
All right. So my recommendations, I have a couple recommendations here. First one's going to be Agent 64. If you enjoyed 007 GoldenEye on the N64, if you enjoyed Perfect Dark, this is just a spiritual successor to those games, and it's just a good love letter to those type of FPS games. Just good fun action, and you'll have fun with different gadgets, the gunplay. It's just enjoyable, and I know it's on PC. I do not remember if it is on console or not, but if it isn't, I feel like it definitely should be. And hopefully a console port will be coming, and I think I could see this being on any console, honestly. And even if it's on the Switch, there's no reason why it couldn't be 60 frames per second on the Switch. So I definitely recommend the game if you enjoyed those types of shooters, those retro shooters. So I definitely recommend that. Other recommendation is related to Power World, and this is mainly if you are trying to do the arena battles. If you are reaching an issue or a point where the fights are probably a bit too difficult, and where you start to learn, oh, if I lose a fight in the arena, I lose points, and that can demote me. I would say feel free to just grind battles that are a tier below the one you're currently at. So you'll receive fewer points, but at the same time you won't lose any, and you can still just try grinding away to reach the next rank. At least until obviously level up in the game overall and you get stronger and you get better gear, and your pals also level up too. So that's my recommendation on that end as well. But yeah, those are all my recommendations.
All right. Well, my recommendation specifically for Final Fantasy 13-2 is that if you are going to go for the different secret endings and getting all the fragments and that sort of thing, make sure that you don't forget to turn on the Paradox Scope fragment ability before you go into certain fights. And as I've said before, use a guide, because that's going to be the easiest way to make sure that you know how to get all the different things are, so you're not wandering around aimlessly. Now, if you don't care about any of that stuff, don't worry about it. Just leave it alone. Finish the game. The end, I mean, even getting the secret ending, it's not something so dramatic. Well, you could easily watch the secret ending on YouTube. And watching the rest of the secret endings, like, they're interesting, but they're not anything to where you have to, and it's not going to change the overall end of the game. Even with the secret ending, the game still ends the same. It's just the secret ending kind of expands a little bit on what information you got previously. But there's that. Secondly, for Final Fantasy, or for Lightning Returns Final Fantasy 13, aka Final Fantasy 13-3, turn on the variable frame rate on the PC version to get above 30 FPS, because if you have it on fixed frame rate, it will be locked to 30 FPS. And you may not care about it being only 30 FPS, and if so, then by all means do that. But if you actually want 60, even if it's not all the time, it's 60 most of the time, even on Steam Deck, definitely turn on the variable frame rate for that. Oh, and then very lastly, I need to recommend making red beans and rice, because it is so good. I made some last week and it was fantastic. We've been consuming the leftovers regularly since then, but it's great. So, yep. All right. Dissuasions.
My dissuasion is going to be, do not get greedy in games during fights and battles. I'm not saying anything in particular has happened, but it has happened to me several times recently where I got a little too greedy, and I realized if I had backed off a bit, I probably could have survived or just won in general. So definitely don't get greedy. Know when to back off in a fight, and just be patient. Otherwise, it'll you'll have regrets a few minutes later and say, "Oh, why did I do that?" So yeah, don't be greedy.
Agreed, definitely, especially when you're playing Souls-likes. Don't be greedy. All right. My dissuasion, I forgot to write it down, so I'm trying to remember what specifically it was. Oh yes, and Lightning Returns on the PC version, don't launch it with advanced shadows, because that can cause it to crash immediately on startup. So don't launch with advanced shadows. I haven't tried reapplying it after adding the patch. It's possible that would fix the problem, but I had fewer issues launching the game just from Steam than I did when I launched it through the launcher and had the advanced shadows on. Once I turned those off, then it launched fine and haven't had any problems since then. But yeah. I'm sure there was something else I was going to say, but I forgot to write it down because there was something that came up on Saturday, I think, and I was like, I know what I need to write down of something that, you shouldn't do, but I didn't write it down. So, of course, that's the way it goes. All right. Well, where can people find you?
They can find me on my channel. I am Xeracon. That's IAMXERACON. So youtube.com/@IamXeracon. I was not able to find the original tweet I was looking for, but I decided, you know what? It was really just going to be on there for about 5 to 10 seconds anyway. I'm going to go ahead and make the video regarding musicians who supposedly do not like playing video game music. So I am definitely working on that right now. It's going to be a bit just because I am looking at this from several different perspectives, both as a gamer and someone who has, studied music, so I can understand some aspects on both ends, but I think it's just a very interesting topic to discuss, so I'm definitely working on that. It might be sometime this week, it might be sometime next week, but we'll definitely just have to wait and see on that end, but that will definitely be the next video that I put out. I also have my other video, Justin's Bible Blog, that's at Justin's Bible Blog. I have not decided what my next video is going to be, so that's still going to be in the works there, but I will notify everyone when that changes. But that is everything.
All right. Well, in my case, you can find me on my YouTube gaming channel at The Frozen Gamer 87. I haven't put out anything new in probably about a month or so. I can't remember when it was, but most recently I put out the long-promised downsides of PC gaming video, in which I basically just explained from the perspective of someone who actually plays on PC what the actual downsides are of playing on PC and why they're not necessarily as big of a deal as they seem. So, and essentially why it is that it's still well worth playing on PC even with those actual downsides. So you can definitely check that out. There is the YouTube channel and the Rumble channel for the podcast. On YouTube, that's at the Orange Box Podcast. On Rumble, it's not a custom URL, but you can still find us there. We put the video version of the podcast live on both channels every Friday, 7 a.m. Central Time, barring technical issues. And the audio-only version goes live on all major audio podcast platforms, including Apple Podcasts, YouTube Music, Spotify, Deezer, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, Audible, and others. And that goes live at 12 a.m. Central Time every Friday, barring technical issues. Now, I will note, for those rare people who on Rumble decide that they're going to subscribe and comment that they're trying to sell us ways to expand the reach of the podcast, I'm just going to tell you right now, I'm not interested. Unless you can provide me a free service, I'm not interested. While yes, I would love for the podcast to grow. The last time someone tried to reach out to me, they clearly had absolutely no idea what we were looking for. The thing that they provided as an image of, what we could put for our banner and stuff, it's like you don't understand what we're going for here. I tried to explain it to them and they clearly didn't get it. I'm not interested in paying for that. I can't afford to pay for it anyway. If this podcast doesn't grow naturally, then it doesn't grow, and that's fine. I'm not doing it with the purpose of expecting it to grow. I'm doing it because I enjoy doing it, because it's a good chance to talk to my friend every week, talk about video games, what's going on in our lives, and also just a great outlet to get that video game talk out, because I don't have a whole lot of opportunities to talk to people about it. Because understandably, my wife doesn't care about video games, and that's perfectly fine. There are things that she likes that I don't care that much about, and when it comes to video games, she doesn't really care about it, but she's still a faithful listener, and I appreciate that. I love you, my beautiful wife. My very beautiful, very pregnant wife. But anyway, all that being said, if you'd like to contact us, you can send us an email to theorangeboxpodcast@gmail.com. You can also comment on the video version of the podcast on either YouTube or on Rumble, and we'll be sure to read your comment on the show, assuming you're not trying to sell us something. Because if you're trying to sell us something, I'm going to delete your comment. Plain and simple. And that's what I did the other day with a Rumble comment. So, that is everything. So, last chance. Any final thoughts?
No, sir.
All right, well, I am the Frozen Gamer 87. That is I am Zeracon. We are the Orange Box Podcast. And until next time, know that there are some wounds that not even Wolverine can heal from. The emotional ones. Orange Box Podcast, out.